At exactly 3:02 a.m., the security camera captured something no one was supposed to see. The mansion stood silent under the pale glow of the night sky, its tall gates locked, its windows dark, and its wealthy owner asleep inside. Everything looked normal, peaceful, controlled, but then the side door slowly opened. A figure stepped out. It was the maid. She moved carefully, almost nervously, looking over her shoulder before stepping onto the cold marble stairs. She wasn't carrying luggage. She wasn't wearing her uniform. Instead, she wore a simple sweater and held something close to her chest, hidden beneath the fabric. Her movements were quiet, deliberate, as if she didn't want anyone to know she was leaving. And for weeks, no one did. Clara had worked in billionaire Daniel Hart's mansion for nearly 2 years. She was quiet, responsible, and almost invisible. She did her job perfectly. Cleaning rooms, preparing breakfast, and taking care of the small details no one else noticed. Daniel trusted her. In fact, he trusted her more than most of the staff. But trust can break in a single moment. It happened on an ordinary morning when Daniel sat in his private office, reviewing security reports. He wasn't suspicious. He wasn't looking for trouble. He simply believed in staying informed. The mansion security system recorded everything. Every door, every hallway, every movement. That's when he saw it. A timestamp, 3:02 a.m. He frowned. No staff were scheduled to leave at that hour. He leaned closer to the screen, watching as the footage played. His heart slowed, his eyes narrowing as he recognized a face. Clara. She was leaving his mansion in the middle of the night. Not once, not twice, but multiple nights. Each time, she left quietly. Each time, she returned before sunrise. And each time, she carried something. Daniel felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. Doubt. Questions began to form in his mind. Why would the maid leave secretly at 3 a.m.? What was she hiding? Was she stealing? Was someone helping her? Or was there something happening inside his mansion that he didn't understand? For the first time since building his empire, Daniel Hart felt like he had lost control of his own home. He watched more footage. Night after night. The same pattern. The same secret exit. The same hidden object held close to her chest. Clara, the quiet maid he trusted, was living a life he knew nothing about. But the most shocking part wasn't that she left. It was what happened on the night he decided to follow her. Because what the billionaire discovered in the darkness would challenge everything he believed about loyalty, trust, and the people closest to him. And by the time the truth came out, nothing inside that mansion would ever be the same again. Daniel Hart had built his life on certainty. In business, nothing was left to chance. Every risk was calculated. Every decision was backed by facts. His billionaire empire didn't exist because he trusted easily. It existed because he questioned everything. And now, sitting alone in the dim glow of his office, replaying the mansion security footage over and over, he realized there was something happening under his own roof that he completely missed. Clara, he remembered the day she was hired. She had walked into the mansion with nervous eyes and quiet confidence. Her clothes were simple, her voice soft, but there was something steady about her. She didn't beg for the job. She didn't oversell herself. She simply promised she would work hard. And she did. She was always early, always respectful, always invisible in the way the best staff often were. Over time, Daniel stopped noticing her presence, and that, in his world, was the highest form of trust. But now, watching her leave the mansion at 3 a.m., that trust began to crack. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the paused screen. Clara's face was frozen in the frame, caught between shadow and light. She looked tense, not like someone doing something casual, like someone carrying a secret. Daniel tried to think logically. If she was stealing, the inventory reports would show it. But nothing was missing. No jewelry, no money, no valuables. The mansion's internal audits were clean. If she was meeting someone, the exterior cameras would have caught another person. But there was no one. She left alone. She returned alone. It made no sense. And the object she carried, it was always held close, hidden carefully, as if it mattered more than anything else. Daniel zoomed in on the footage, adjusting the clarity. The image blurred slightly, but he could see enough to know one thing. It wasn't random. Whatever she was carrying, she protected it. His chest tightened slightly, though he couldn't explain why. He stood up and walked toward the large window overlooking the sleeping city. From up here, everything looked small, predictable, controlled. But inside his own mansion, something was moving beyond his control. He thought about confronting her immediately, calling her into his office, demanding answers. That would have been the fastest solution. But something stopped him. Instinct. Years of experience had taught him that people revealed more when they didn't know they were being watched. So instead, he decided to wait. The next day, Clara moved through the mansion exactly as she always did. She cleaned the dining room. She organized the kitchen. She greeted him politely, her expression calm, her voice steady. "Good morning, sir." There was no sign of fear, no sign of guilt. If she was hiding something, she hid it perfectly. Daniel studied her carefully without letting his attention show. He noticed the small details, the way her hands moved, the way she avoided eye contact just slightly longer than usual. Or maybe he was imagining it. That was a problem with doubt. Once it entered your mind, everything looked different. That evening, Daniel made a decision he had never made before. He adjusted the mansion security system himself. He turned off the motion alerts that would normally notify the staff manager. He made sure only he would receive the camera feed. No one else would know. He wasn't going to confront Clara. He was going to follow her. And as midnight slowly approached, Daniel Hart sat in the darkness of his office, watching the clock, waiting for 3 a.m. to arrive again. Because deep down, he knew that whatever secret the maid was hiding, it was bigger than he had ever imagined. The digital clock on Daniel Hart's desk changed from 2:59 to 3 a.m. He hadn't moved for nearly an hour. The billionaire sat in silence, watching the live security camera feed from his mansion hallway. The screen showed nothing but empty marble floors and soft shadows stretching across the walls. The house looked peaceful, just like every other night. But now Daniel knew better. Peace could hide secrets. His phone rested in his hand, connected directly to the private security system. No alerts, no warnings, only waiting. At 3:02 a.m., the side hallway camera flickered slightly. Then she appeared. Clara. She stepped into view slowly, wearing the same simple sweater Daniel had seen in the recordings. Her hair was tied back, and her face looked pale under the dim lights. She paused near the door, listening carefully, as if she could sense the entire mansion breathing around her. Daniel's heart began to beat faster. This time, he wasn't watching old footage. This was happening now. Clara held something close to her chest again, wrapped carefully in cloth. She adjusted her grip, her fingers protective, almost gentle. For a moment, she closed her eyes like she was preparing herself. Then she opened the door and disappeared into the night. Daniel stood up immediately. He didn't hesitate anymore. He moved quietly through his office, down the private staircase, and toward the garage. His movements were controlled, but inside his thoughts raced. He didn't know what he expected to find. Theft, betrayal, or something worse. He reached his car, but stopped himself before opening the door. If he followed too closely, she might notice. Instead, he walked toward the side window, overlooking the outer grounds. From there, he saw her. Clara wasn't heading toward the front gate. She was walking in the opposite direction, toward the old service path. Daniel frowned. That path hadn't been used in years. It led beyond the manicured gardens, past the staff quarters, and toward a small, rarely used exit gate at the back of the property. Why would she go that way? He watched as her small figure moved carefully through the darkness, her pace quick but cautious. She looked over her shoulder once, then continued forward. She knew she wasn't supposed to be seen. Daniel felt something unfamiliar settle deeper in his chest. Not just suspicion, concern. Behind him, the mansion remained silent, filled with expensive furniture, polished floors, and empty rooms. For the first time, it didn't feel like a place of power. It felt like a place full of unanswered questions. Meanwhile, outside the gates, Clara's heart pounded with every step. She wasn't thinking about the risk anymore. She wasn't thinking about losing her job. She wasn't thinking about the billionaire who trusted her. She was thinking about time. She adjusted her hold on the bundle in her arms, making sure it was safe. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. The nights had been getting harder, the secret heavier. She had promised herself she would keep going, no matter what. Back inside, Daniel made a choice that surprised even himself. He grabbed his coat and headed toward the back exit on foot. He didn't want the sound of a car engine to warn her. He needed to see this with his own eyes. As he stepped outside, the cold air hit his face, sharp and real. In the distance, he could see her approaching the old gate. Then, something happened that made him stop completely. Clara wasn't alone anymore. A shadow moved near the gate. Someone was waiting for her. Daniel's breath caught as he stepped back into the darkness, his billionaire instincts telling him one thing clearly. Whatever Clara was hiding, she wasn't the only one involved. Daniel froze in place, his body half hidden behind the stone wall near the back garden. The cold night air felt heavier now, pressing against his chest as he stared toward the old service gate. Clara stood there, her small figure facing someone in the shadows. For a moment, neither of them moved. The mansion security lights didn't reach that far, leaving only faint outlines visible. Daniel strained his eyes, trying to understand what he was seeing. The other person was shorter than him, thinner, standing very still. They didn't look like a threat. They didn't move like someone dangerous. They moved like someone waiting. Clara stepped closer to the gate, her hands tightening around the bundle she carried. Daniel noticed how careful she was, how protective her posture looked. She wasn't acting like someone delivering stolen property. She was acting like someone protecting something fragile. The shadowed figure took a small step forward. Daniel's pulse quickened. He wanted to get closer, but every instinct warned him to stay hidden. Years of business had taught him patience. Acting too soon could destroy any chance of learning the truth. He watched as Clara slowly lowered herself to one knee. It wasn't fear. It wasn't surrender. It looked like care. She gently adjusted the cloth around whatever she held, her hands moving with quiet urgency. The other figure leaned in slightly, and Daniel could hear faint movement but not words. The distance was just enough to keep their conversation out of reach. Why here? Why at 3 a.m.? Why in secret? Questions flooded his mind faster than he could answer them. Inside the mansion, Daniel Hart was a billionaire who controlled everything. But out here, in the darkness behind his own property, he was just a man watching a secret unfold without permission. Clara hesitated, then slowly began to hand the bundle toward the waiting figure. Daniel's heart slammed harder against his ribs. This was it. This was the moment. His mind raced through possibilities. Was she giving something away? Was she part of something he never suspected? Was his trust misplaced all along? The figure reached out carefully, their hands trembling slightly as they accepted the bundle. Not aggressively, gently, like it mattered more than anything. Daniel stepped forward without thinking, his shoe brushing lightly against the gravel. The sound was small, but in the silence of the night, it was enough. Clara's head snapped up instantly. Her eyes searched the darkness. Daniel stopped breathing. For a second, neither of them moved. The distance between them suddenly felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Clara's face was no longer calm. It was filled with something deeper. Fear. Not fear of being caught stealing. Not fear of punishment. Fear of being discovered. The other figure froze as well, clutching the bundle protectively, stepping back slightly. Daniel's billionaire instincts told him to step forward, to demand answers, to take control of the situation he owned. But something else held him back. Something human. Something uncertain. Clara took a small step toward the darkness, toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who's there?" Daniel could hear the tremble in her words. She knew someone was watching. The truth was seconds away from revealing itself. Daniel tightened his hands into fists, his heart pounding louder than ever before. One step forward would end the mystery. One step forward would change everything he believed about the Maid, about trust, and about what had been happening inside his mansion at 3 a.m. And slowly, unable to stop himself any longer, Daniel Hart stepped out of the shadows. The moment Daniel Hart stepped out of the shadows, the world seemed to stop. Clara's eyes widened instantly, her face draining of color as recognition hit her. She hadn't expected this. Not him. Not here. Not now. "Sir," she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of the moment. The other figure reacted faster. They pulled the bundle closer to their chest and stepped back toward the old gate, their movement protective, almost desperate. Daniel finally saw their face clearly under the faint moonlight. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone from his own staff quarters. Elias, the quiet groundskeeper who had worked on the property for over 10 years. Daniel felt the shock ripple through him. Elias was older, loyal, and almost invisible, just like Clara. He had been there long, before Clara was hired. He rarely spoke, rarely asked for anything, and had never given Daniel a single reason to doubt him. Yet here he was, at 3 a.m., meeting the maid in secret, holding something they clearly didn't want Daniel to see. The realization made Daniel's chest tighten. This wasn't just about Clara anymore. This was bigger. 2 trusted employees, both hiding something from him, both meeting behind his mansion in the middle of a night. "How long?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but heavy. Neither of them answered. Clara's breathing grew uneven. Elias stood frozen, his arms wrapped protectively around the bundle, his eyes filled with conflict. Daniel stepped closer, his polished shoes pressing into the gravel. His billionaire authority was undeniable now, filling the space between them. "I asked you a question," he said quietly. Clara shook her head slightly, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Not dramatic, not loud, just silent and real. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said. Daniel frowned. "Find out what?" Before he could speak again, a sudden sound cut through the silence. A sharp notification tone. It came from Daniel's phone. All 3 of them froze. Daniel slowly reached into his pocket, his eyes never leaving Clara and Elias. The mansion security system had sent him an alert. Movement detected. Inside the mansion. Daniel's heart skipped. That was impossible. He was outside. Clara was here. Elias was here. No other staff were scheduled tonight. He looked down at the screen. The live camera feed showed the interior hallway near his private office. And someone was there. A figure moved across the camera quickly, heading deeper into the mansion. Daniel felt a cold wave rush through his body. This didn't make sense. If Clara and Elias were both outside, then who was inside his home? His grip tightened on the phone. Clara noticed his expression change. Her fear deepened, but it wasn't the fear of being caught anymore. It was something else. Something more urgent. "Sir, please," she said quietly. "You don't understand." Daniel looked up at her sharply. "Then explain it," he demanded, but Clara hesitated. Not because she didn't want to speak, because she was afraid of what would happen next. Behind them, the old gate creaked softly in the night breeze. In front of them, the billionaire's mansion stood tall and silent, hiding a new secret Daniel never expected. Someone was inside, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. And suddenly, the mystery of the maid leaving at 3 a.m. was no longer the only truth waiting to be uncovered. Daniel didn't wait another second. He turned and ran back toward the mansion, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in a boardroom or business deal. Behind him, Clara's voice called out, but he couldn't focus on her words. The only thing that mattered now was the security alert. Someone was inside his home, someone who didn't belong there. His mind raced with possibilities. A break-in, a spy, someone targeting him. He reached the side entrance and pushed the door open quickly, stepping into the dark hallway. The mansion, once a symbol of his power and control, now felt unfamiliar, vulnerable. His phone screen showed the last camera location, the hallway leading to his private office. He moved carefully, his footsteps quieter now. As he turned the corner, he saw it. The door to his office was slightly open. Daniel stopped. That door was always locked. He felt his chest tighten as he slowly pushed it open. Inside, the lights were still off, but the large window let in enough moonlight to reveal a figure standing near his desk. Small, still, not moving. Daniel stepped forward cautiously. "Who's there?" he asked firmly. The figure turned, and Daniel froze. It wasn't a stranger. It was a child. A young boy, no older than 7, stood there, staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. His clothes were simple, his face pale with fear. He wasn't holding anything. He wasn't stealing anything. He looked lost. Daniel's voice softened without him realizing it. "How did you get in here?" Before the boy could answer, hurried footsteps echoed behind Daniel. Clara and Elias had followed him inside. The moment Clara saw the boy, her composure broke. "Adam," she whispered. The boy's face changed instantly. Relief replaced fear. He ran to her. Clara dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms tightly around him, holding him like she never wanted to let go. Daniel stood there, stunned. His mind struggled to connect the pieces. This is why," Clara said quietly, her voice trembling. "This is why I left at 3 a.m. Daniel looked at the boy, then at Elias, who stood silently near the door. Clara took a slow breath. "He's my son." The words hung in the air. Daniel felt the truth settle in. Clara had never been stealing. She had never been betraying him. She had been protecting her child. He was staying in the staff quarters. Elias said gently, "I help watch over him." She didn't want anyone to know. She was afraid she'd lose her job if they found out. Daniel's chest tightened. All those nights, all those secret exits, all the suspicion. It had never been about crime. It had been about fear. Fear of losing the only stability she had. Daniel looked at the boy again. Adam stared back, holding Clara's hand tightly. But something still didn't make sense. "How did he get inside my office?" Daniel asked quietly. Clara hesitated. "I told him never to come inside," she said. "He knows that." Daniel's phone buzzed softly in his hand. Another security notification. He looked down at the screen. The camera feed showed something that made his blood run cold. The office door. Opening. But Daniel, Clara, Elias, and the boy were all standing inside already. Slowly, Daniel turned his head. Behind him, the office door moved slightly. Not pushed by anyone. Not touched. Just moving. And in that moment, Daniel realized something that chilled him to the core. The security alert hadn't been about the boy entering. It had been about something else. Something that had already been inside his mansion long before any of them noticed. The office fell into complete silence. Daniel stared at the door, his mind struggling to accept what he had just seen. It had moved. Slowly. Quietly. But there was no one there. No footsteps. No shadow. Nothing. Clara held Adam closer, her heart racing, while Elias stepped forward cautiously, his eyes scanning the hallway behind them. Daniel forced himself to breathe. Then his phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't an emotion alert. It was a system notification. Security system update complete. Daniel frowned. He hadn't scheduled any update. He quickly opened the security control panel on his phone and began scrolling through the system logs. His eyes moved fast, searching for anything unusual. Then he saw it. A remote access entry. Someone had logged into his mansion security system less than 10 minutes ago. Daniel's stomach tightened. But the location wasn't outside the mansion. It wasn't a hacker across the world. It was from inside. Specifically from his own office computer. Daniel slowly turned his head toward the desk. The monitor was dark now, silent, but he remembered something clearly. He had left it on earlier, before he went outside. Clara noticed his expression. "Sir, what is it?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He walked slowly toward the desk and touched the mouse. The screen lit up. A login window appeared. Someone had accessed the system. Someone who knew how to avoid triggering alarms. Someone who didn't want to be seen. Then Daniel understood. The system hadn't been warning him about a person in the room. It had been warning him about access. Digital access. Someone had been watching his cameras. Watching Clara. Watching him. Watching everything. Daniel's mind flashed back to the recent weeks. The small delays in the system. The random glitches he had ignored. The assumption that his technology was untouchable. He had built his billionaire empire on control, but control had quietly slipped away without him noticing. Elias spoke softly. "Sir, we didn't do anything with your system. We wouldn't even know how." Daniel believed him. Clara had been hiding her son out of fear, not deception. Elias had been helping out of kindness, not betrayal. The real truth wasn't about Clara leaving the mansion at 3 a.m. The real truth was that Daniel had been so focused on protecting his wealth that he had forgotten to see the people around him. He looked at Clara and Adam. Clara's eyes were filled with fear, waiting for judgment. But Daniel didn't feel anger anymore. He felt clarity. "You should have told me," he said quietly. Clara lowered her eyes. "I was afraid." Daniel nodded slowly. Fear made people hide. Fear made people act in the shadows. He understood that now. He looked at Adam, who held Clara's hand tightly. This small secret hadn't been about betrayal. It had been about survival. Daniel took a deep breath. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said. Clara looked up, surprised. "Your son stays," Daniel continued. "Both of you stay." Tears filled Clara's eyes, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from relief. Outside, the mansion remained quiet under the early morning sky. But inside, something had changed. Daniel Hart had spent his life building walls, cameras, and security systems to protect himself. Yet the biggest truth had been right in front of him all along. Trust wasn't built through surveillance. It was built through understanding. And as Daniel stood there in the same office where the mystery had begun, he realized something he would never forget. The maid leaving the mansion at 3 a.m. hadn't been the real danger. The real danger had been how close he came to losing his humanity without ever noticing.